Welcome to the Living the Dream podcast with Curveball. If you believe, you can achieve. Welcome to the Living the Dream with Curveball podcast, a show where I interview guests that teach, motivate, and inspire. Today, I am joined by Neal, and she is going to talk about how she is helping spread awareness to the benefit for normal people to learn Latin and you know, how learning Latin can be easier for them. So we're going to be talking to her about everything that she's up to and going to be up to. So, Kay, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me, Curtis. I appreciate it.
Why don't you start off by telling everybody a little bit about yourself?
Okay. Well, the relevant thing for this podcast is that for this interview is that I am on a mission to spread an awareness of how valuable Latin is, or how valuable it can be, and also to make it easier for people to learn it, so they don't just walk away. You know, they start and then they say, "Oh, this is too hard," and then they walk off. And I've been on this mission for quite a while, and I've start and stopped many times because I would get overwhelmed at some point, and I couldn't figure out how to go forward. But I really feel that besides having 4 children and sending them out into the world, my mission in Latin is what I was put here on earth to do. So I keep coming back to it because even when it gets frustrating, I can't shake that's what I'm supposed to be doing. So I come back and I give it another try. And so that's kind of me in a nutshell, as far as Latin goes.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. You know, your start, talk about how you first started and you felt you got defeated, but then you came back at it, and why you think it's so important for other people to learn.
Well, when people talk about the importance of learning Latin, they very often focus on vocabulary, and vocabulary is certainly a good reason to learn Latin. It really increases your English vocabulary, but well, in fact, 90% of English words that are 3 or more syllables come from Latin or Greek, which is like a sister language of Latin. But I think studying Latin is the better thing besides the vocabulary, is the linguistic awareness it gives you about how your own language operates. And for the people I'm trying to reach, they're English speakers, and usually they're monolingual English speakers. They've never studied a foreign language before. They've never studied one successfully before, and so I want to help them stick with it and make it, put enough wins in there so that they can get the benefits, get this linguistic awareness. One of the great things about studying Latin, and when you study Latin, usually you're taking a very heavy dose of grammar. And when you study grammar, when you study Latin grammar, you end up learning English grammar. And one of the benefits of that is when you're reading, you can tell. You can pull sentences apart. When you get to a sentence that you can't understand, you can take it apart, and sometimes you'll see that it's the author who has written a sentence that doesn't hang together syntactically, and it's not your fault. And so that is a really, really good a good skill to have. Also, you become sort of the grammar maven for your family and your friends. They're always consulting you to see if a sentence is right, if an expression is acceptable to use, because you've done the work of getting of getting formal grammar into your head, and that is a very useful thing to have. And we lose track of that today in the U.S. I'm not sure about other English-speaking countries, but we don't really teach grammar anymore, and our language is falling apart. And that's not the only reason, but that's part of it. So I think our standards of language need to be a lot higher than they are, and studying Latin will help us get there.
What do you feel like Latin deserves this reputation of being a hard language to learn?
Well, okay, so let's define hard. In my opinion, hard is anything is hard that requires effort. Not just requires effort, but requires effort over a period of time. You have to keep putting effort into it over a period of time, and that's every language. Um, Latin has its own difficulties, though. Latin and I'll put ancient Greek in this category as well, because they're not anybody's native language. That's how you define a dead language. Does anybody speak it as a native language? And Latin and Greek do not are not spoken as a native language. So there aren't the if you're going to learn German or Spanish or French or Chinese, you can get like children's literature. You can start off easy. You can start off with songs, and of course, Latin has a rich history of and music, from the Middle Ages. But there aren't things that make it easy to start off. So the when people think of Latin, they usually think of classical Latin, and that's the golden age of Latin, which lasted for really not even 100 years. And what was produced in this classical period that we have today is our writings that were produced by the cream of the crop for the cream of the crop. So they're very sophisticated. They aren't like a young adult novel. They are very sophisticated, nuanced. The grammar is very complicated because the audience that these writings were directed to could handle it. And so, if that is what imagine you're going to learn English, and the idea of learning English is so you can read Shakespeare. Imagine how hard English would be. Well, Latin is like that, if you're going for those classics, and that's what a lot of people are doing when they go for Latin. But every language is hard if you're going to do it right. Spanish is, people like high schoolers who are not sophisticated linguistically, they go into high school thinking, okay, yeah, I'll take Spanish. That'll be real easy. You just put an O on the end of everything and you're speaking Spanish. And that couldn't be further from the truth. Spanish has very intricate grammar, and it takes a long time to actually get on top of it and master it. And so Spanish is hard. So I don't think that Latin, the content that you have to learn the Latin grammar, is not any harder than any other well-developed language. But people let this scary reputation make them think they couldn't do it. And in fact, I would not have signed up for Latin by myself. I didn't think I could learn a foreign language. I didn't think I could. I didn't think I would be any good at studying a foreign language. And my eighth grade English teacher made me sign up for it when I went to high school. And otherwise, I wouldn't have attempted it. I would be too afraid. So that was maybe a wordy answer to the question.
Or do you feel like Latin should be taught as a mainstream subject today? Why or why not?
Well, I do, but with a big caveat. I wouldn't just say like we somehow must get Latin into the mainstream curriculum, because for one thing, we don't have Latin teachers, or we don't have anywhere close to the number of Latin teachers that it would take to do that. But I mean, one thing that you do see done sometimes in school is in elementary school and middle school and even high school, really, is students will be taught Latin roots of words, and prefixes and roots, and this is something, but it's not the same as seeing Latin, in Latin words in their native habitat. And the thing about teaching Latin as a mainstream subject is the grammar that you learn, and I think we've done a huge disservice to our students by not really studying grammar. I mean, do you know when my kids were young, I remember them coming home, like say they would be in third grade, and they would come home with an English assignment, and it would involve peer editing. And what third grader, even what 12th grader, is qualified to edit somebody else's paper? They're learning the grammar. They're learning style. They're not qualified to point out other people's mistakes. I mean, that's people don't, if you don't study something, how can you evaluate somebody else's application of that thing? How can you give somebody advice on that thing? I found it so offensive. And of course, if you're gonna teach Latin in that sloppy fashion, it wouldn't really do that much good to have it as a mainstream stream subject. But that's a kind of a pipe dream of mine. But one thing that hurts my heart is that Latin is available almost exclusively to schools in, schools, very well funded schools. So you don't find it. The people that could benefit from it the most are underserved already. And if you made a push to get Latin out there, it's going to show up in the richer schools, the schools that are in richer neighborhoods, and it's probably just going to make the gap between a class gap bigger, to have it just in certain places. So I would like to see it taught as a mainstream subject, but not just for the sake of it being a mainstream subject. But yeah, that's a dream that Latin would be a lot more widespread than it is now.
Let's take a quick break.
Okay, everybody, it's Michael E. Cullen II.
And I'm Sesame and Carta from the All Too Real 2 podcast. We're passionate about movies, TV, and pretty much all things pop culture.
Dive into the chaos of failed sitcoms, direct-to-video sequels, and the quirky realms of cinema and TV.
Join us every Thursday for your dose of All Too Real 2 entertainment.
We'll guide you through debates like whether Howard the Duck qualifies as a superhero.
Ponder if Larry the Cable Guy could be the new Rock or Schwarzenegger.
Discover if some shows and movies should have stayed in the cutting room.
Ever heard of a sitcom featuring that dictator with the funny mustache? Well, we watched it.
We're dedicated to unraveling the peculiarities of pop culture, sometimes with awesome guests.
So, if you're into the eccentric world of pop culture,
listen and subscribe to All Too Real 2.
Available wherever you find podcasts
and on Age of Radio.
Well, let's talk about the marketing of Latin. How have you managed to market something that's not that popular, and talk about the biggest marketing mistakes you've made while trying to market?
Yeah, yeah, the marketing is so when I got my mission, when I found out what my mission was in life, that I came back to Latin after having had it in high school. I came back to Latin. I ended up going back to university, and I did a second bachelor's degree. This was in Latin. I did a second master's degree. This was in Latin. And so then I thought, okay, I'm good with the content. I can actually go out and accomplish my mission as far as the Latin goes. But then, of course, there's the marketing. People aren't just lining up to come in and have me teach them Latin. And so I made so many marketing mistakes. And the first marketing mistake that I made was thinking that Latin was so special that you don't need to market it. People will just know the value of it, and they will, if they see the opportunity is there, they'll come running with their dollars to pay somebody for Latin, and that wasn't true at all. So what I had to do was realize that, well, of course I ended up spending a lot of money on marketing training, because I didn't have the first idea how to go about accessing my audience. And one thing I've realized over the years, besides just the rules of marketing that I've learned, the principles of marketing, is that if somebody doesn't want something, just leave them alone. You don't try to change somebody's mind, but just try to find the people who already have in mind that they want to that they want to do that. That you have something that they have always wanted, and those people are out there, but you have to find them. And I'll tell you, when I started off, I wrote a couple of books, and the second one. The first one I did absolutely no marketing research on, and I can't even explain to you what it's a reference book, but you'd have to know a little bit about Latin to even understand what is this book. But I got some nice reviews on it from professors of classics, but it just it didn't go anywhere. I didn't know how to market it, and that wasn't really why I wanted to. It just was a dead end. Then I wrote a book that was better for the market. It was called Teach Your Dog Latin, and I wrote that. But again, I didn't do any market research. I just thought people would like this. But when I was trying to market that book, somebody told me about this program in my town where retired people go and learn. They take classes that don't have any homework, and they're short. They're 90 minutes a week for 8 weeks. And they said, why don't you go pitch Latin to these people? They seem like the kind of people that might like Latin. And I live in a university town, and there are a lot of people that like they're lifelong learners. And so I pitched a Latin course to these guys, and never heard anything. And somebody told me, did you follow up? And I said, actually, no, I did not follow up. And, which makes me think, like, what was I thinking? I never even picked up the phone and said, hey, what do you think about this proposal of mine? Well, anyway, I had given up on them. And then I got an email from them saying, we'd love to have Latin at our institute. Can you teach at this or that time? And so I was delighted they were going to offer it. And then I called them up and said, could I come and look at the classroom so I can see what I've got to work with here? And they said, yeah, sure, come on over. And then when I got over, they told me that my class had filled up. And I was so excited because I thought, this may be 20 people who actually want to learn Latin. They want to study Latin. And I asked them to see the class. They were going to show me the classroom, and I went into the classroom, and it turned out it was 48 seats. 48 people had signed up for Latin. 48 retired people. So these are people like 55 and over had signed up for Latin, and I couldn't believe it standing there. I thought, like, oh my gosh, finally, I'm finding my people. And I imagined those seats, 48 of them, all of them have somebody in them who wants to learn what I am so passionate about sharing. And then the director of the center told me, she told me, we had to make a wait list because your class filled up. Either it was the first or the second class to fill up. And we started a wait list, and it has 16 people on it. And if we could find another classroom or another time, would you be willing to teach a second section? And of course, I jumped at the chance, and that filled up. And so in my town, and which is not that big, there were 48 times 2 equals 96 people who wanted to come in person and learn Latin. And so that's when I knew that there is a market there. But you have to know how to tap into it. You have to, and sometimes this is just trial and error. And but I was amazed. And some of these people came in like with walkers, and I don't know if there was anybody with oxygen or not, but there might have been. I mean, they were not all in good shape. They were retirees. They were minimum of age 55 and into their 80s and more. And so it was if you're trying to find a market and you have some niche that's just so specialized, your biggest problem, I think, is going to be finding, where are these people? Do they congregate anywhere? And for me, I have never found a place where people who are interested in Latin actually congregate. There's not like a publication I can advertise in where there's huge numbers of people who want to do Latin. So I just have to find them kind of here and there. They pop up here and there, and it was a really big marketing mistake not to realize that I will have to go out and find them. And that's what I'm so grateful to be on your podcast, because this is a big part of my strategy right now is to find podcasts that will let me come on and talk about my mission. And I know that maybe some people who follow you regularly will say, Latin, I'm not interested in that. But maybe there might be somebody who will who would be interested. And I don't mean that somebody has to like hire me as a teacher or anything like that. I want to get Latin out there. And I was in a Toastmasters club for a while, and I actually got to represent my chapter at a regional competition. And when I walked, and of course my topic had something to do with Latin. I'm sure you won't be surprised to hear that. And when I walked into that competition and I could just see the level of these people, I thought, well, I'm not winning anything today. I am getting nothing, but I do have my stage time. And so my idea of and instead of like thinking like, oh, I would, I'd like to take home a trophy or take it back to my club, what I thought was, okay, there's going to be some parents in this audience, and I can talk about Latin. And maybe, 5-6 years down the line, one of these parents might be at a school board meeting, and they might say, hey, I heard somebody talk about the advantages of teaching your children Latin. And why don't we look into hiring a Latin teacher? Why don't we have a Latin department in or a Latin program in our school? And so that became what I talked about. I have no idea if anybody took anything out of my talk that day. It was, I don't know, 10 years ago. But that's the kind of approach you have to play the long game. You cannot be concerned about reaping a benefit immediately. You have to be in it for the long term. And that's something people don't want to face. And I didn't want to face it either, but I'm okay with it now. I've gotten peace with it now.
Well, tell us about any upcoming projects that you're working on that people need to be aware of.
Well, I'm just starting a new program that you can find. You can. I want to find people for that, but before I can do that, I need to find people who just want to hear about Latin, want to hear, are even moderately interested in the topic. Because I don't expect anybody to like go whole hog into it without like dipping their toe in. And so I have an email list. Well, I have a free report that people can get if they go on my website, which is BK Neal, so BKAYNEAL.com. And you can get my free report, and then I will send you daily emails on something interesting about Latin, something that's for people who do not know Latin, don't know grammar, but just have an interest, even if it's a mild interest. And my hope is that I can be so entertaining and so engaging that you would actually look forward to reading these every day, and eventually think that that you might like to actually work with me in a group or one-on-one. So that's what I have coming up, Curtis, and I really appreciate you letting me have the chance to mention it.
No problem. Close us out with some final thoughts. Maybe if there was something that you forgot to touch on, or I forgot to touch on, that you would like to make the listeners aware of.
Well, I mean, if you just like handed me a mic, I could go on for some hours. So let me think. This is a nice opportunity, this question. Uh, yeah, everybody can learn a foreign language, and even if it's not Latin, everybody could learn a foreign language. And if you approach it with the idea that you're not going to be perfect at first, and you're going to be like a baby, and even laugh at yourself for the mistakes that you make, eventually you will get somewhere if you are willing to put in the time with an open mind and a quiet heart. You can get somewhere.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, is that all that you have to say, Miss Neal?
I'll restrain myself, and so I'll say yes. That is all I have to say for right now.
All right, well, be sure to visit bkneal.com for more information on everything that Kay's up to. Follow, rate, review, share this episode to as many people as possible. For more information or to leave feedback or suggestions for the Living the Dream with Curveball podcast, visit www.curveball337.com. Thank you for listening and supporting the show. And Kay, thank you for all that you're doing, and thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much, Curtis. I am so grateful to you.
For more information on the Living the Dream with Curveball podcast, visit www.curveball337.com. Until next time, keep living the dream.